Hello.
Hi, this is Chandan.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning.
Give me like 2 minutes. I'll just start.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. I've not started yet.
Okay, I thought I cannot hear. Thank you. Fine. Thank you.
Sir, which topic we covered yesterday?
We covered all the interface, different uh, interface options like layer 3, vWire, loopback, VLAN interface.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Fine, let's begin. We discussed layer 3 interface yesterday, and I just wanted to quickly touch on, although we have done this interface management profile, right? Uh, I hope you guys remember, in which I showed you that by default, when I try to ping from Win1/1 or Win3 to Ethernet1/2, it didn't work. Although when Win2 and
Sudhanshu,
Win3 both were in the same zone. Yeah,
Sudhanshu,
yeah,
your voice is not clear.
yeah. Just a second. I think it should be better now. Okay. What was I? Yeah. I was telling you that sometime back when we were doing like I think on Friday when we were doing lab, uh, and both of these interfaces, Ethernet1/1 and Ethernet1/2, were part of the same zone. Okay, and at that time I tried doing a ping from Win2 to Win3. It worked, right? Because within the zone communication or intra-zone communication happens without any security policy creation. And then if you remember, I tried to ping the firewall interface, which was acting as a default gateway, but it didn't respond. And then I had gone somewhere here under the advanced tab. I had configured this interface management profile, in which I told you that by default firewall won't respond to any of these administrative services or network services until unless you create an interface management profile and apply that under the interface. So like currently the interface management profile, if you want to look at that as well, you can directly go here as well. So if you see the management profile currently applied has this checkbox checked for ping. Okay. So based on that, I think if you try to ping from Win2 or Win3, any of the interfaces, if you ping off the firewall, it will respond. You might not do this in a production environment, but in here we are going to test some things. Sometimes we are going to trace route or check connectivity. So for a lab environment, it's like most likely you'll create this management profile all the time. Okay, and like this Win2, has an IP of this. Okay, Win3 has an IP of this, and if I try to ping from Win2 to Win3, it works, as well as if I try to 1.0.2.11, and at the same time, even if I try to ping the firewall interface, like this 10.0.1.1, the default gateway address is on firewall. So firewall is responding as well. So nothing new till now, whatever we have done. Okay, and although now, if you look at this current scenario, Ethernet 1/1 and 1/2 are in different zones. Okay, like one of them is in this under zone, another is in DMZ zone. So why they are able to communicate? Because if you remember again from the past, we had configured this basic security policy saying like if source zone is this and destination zone is this, then we have allowed it. Okay, we have not touched any of these tabs yet, right? We just added the zone. So since it is allowed, that's why Win2 is able to communicate with Win2. Okay, and in fact, right now, if I try to ping from Win3, suppose 10.0.1.11. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, so it doesn't work. Fine. Why? Because we have not created anything from DMZ to under zone. Okay, we have said source zone should be this, destination zone should be this, then traffic will be allowed. And if you see, I'll just refresh this. Okay, these 4 pings were matched to this rule, the default interzone rule, which is basically blocking all of it. Okay, denying. Fine. So people also sometimes get this question like, or they have this in their mind. They are like, okay, if Win2 here or Win3 here, 2 machines. If there is Palo Alto here and the under zone, the DMZ zone. See, if you make a policy, if you make a rule from this that you have said source zone to destination zone, this you have allowed. Okay. Now what happens is when you try to ping from Win2, okay, when you try to ping from Win2 to Win3 here, obviously, as you know, there is a ICMP echo request which is sent from Win2 to Win3, right? And then Win3 responds with the ICMP echo reply, right? So people sometimes have this question in their mind, like, why does this get pings reply? Because when you send that ICMP echo request, okay, this guy is initiating, this guy is responding, right? Echo request, echo reply. Now, when this guy is responding, okay, Palo Alto says that basically initiator to responder you should allow using a security policy, okay. In the reverse direction traffic flow, it will be automatically allowed because Palo Alto will maintain this information in the state table that whenever this guy goes out, source IP this, destination IP this, and we can check that as well in the session table. Like, let me open up the SSH session of. Okay, so if we do show session all here, currently we are not able to see anything because it's been very long from the last time we did things. Now 120, and you see it's maintaining this session flow information and giving each of them a session ID. Okay, 19, 20, 21, 22. And in here, what you see is this is basically app ID trying to identify what application you are using. Although, you know, we don't call ICMP and application layer protocol, but like app ID considers this is ping. Okay. So say it is active, you see source IP address was this is the IP address of Win2. Okay. This is the protocol number. IP protocol number for ICMP is 1, right? This is the source zone. Okay. And now we didn't do any natting. That's why for the translated IP port pair, it doesn't show you anything because we have not done any natting, right? The destination port, okay, you can just match it with this. Okay, this is the destination. Okay, sorry, I tried to ping firewall. Let me ping that 10.0.2.11. Okay, so now you see here 10.0.2.11 is the destination. Okay, and it's going in the DMZ zone. Okay, now since firewall remembers this, okay, when ICMP echo request is sent, firewall when receives ICMP echo reply in response to that echo request, it's going to allow that to go to Win2. Okay, whereas now when we make this guy initiator, okay, like if I try to ping from Win3 to Win2, since there is no security policy saying source zone DMZ, destination zone under, it doesn't work. Okay, so let's come back here. Okay. These things we looked at yesterday. And actually we are going to go today into security and NAT policies. Okay, just before that, let me introduce you to PBF. Okay, policy based forwarding here. And this policy based forwarding is, if you are coming from the Cisco background, you might have heard of PBR. Okay, policy based routing. Okay, has anyone heard here of policy based routing?
Yes,
Not
in Cisco, yes, it is PBR. I remember.
Yeah. So if you have not heard, no problem. I'll just quickly refresh the concept. And actually, the concept is same. Like whether you talk about Cisco, it's just that the policy-based routing has been renamed to policy-based forwarding because of some maybe copyright reasons. Okay. Uh, so it's simple. When you do most of the times the routing, you do routing based on
I think PBR, in PBR we used to put some policies on the interface. What I remember is that it's basically a
I'll remind what it is. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so most of the times what you do is when packet comes to you, you look at the destination IP, right? And based on the destination IP, you find an entry in the routing table, and then you from the routing table you get an interface, and you send it further, right? That's the base process of routing, right? That I think everybody has learned in CCN. Now, sometimes what happens is like even in router scenario, you might want that if the traffic is coming from sourced from the subnet of, like, suppose this subnet, okay, I want to route it out some interface, okay, and if the traffic is coming out this subnet, okay, then maybe I want to route it out this interface. Now we are not talking about the destination here. What we are talking about is the source. Okay, like if the source is this subnet, then I want that to be routed here. If the source is this subnet, I want it to route it out here. Now this is quite different to what we learn about in CCNA about routing, right? And it's not just about source. Okay, we can have many other criteria. Okay, so this is what is called policy based routing in Cisco. Means you don't route it just based on destination IP, you route the traffic based on something else, like sometimes source, sometimes what kind of traffic it is. Okay, so here also, like suppose this is our firewall, the concept is similar. Suppose we have two connections. Okay, one is a private lease line, maybe from Tata Communication Limited, we are paying a good amount of money for that. And another is a regular internet connection. Okay, and now what happens is, like, whenever traffic comes from here, suppose what you want is that if the traffic is for, I'm just taking an example. Suppose you want that if the traffic is for voice over IP, okay, or some other delay sensitive traffic, okay, then I want that the traffic should be sent here using this private lease line, because it will experience less delay, and because this is kind of a premium service that we are paying for. Okay, and maybe other traffic I'll send it out using the regular internet connection link. Okay, on a similar example, it could be also like, suppose we have some databases hosted here. Okay, and we want that for these particular databases, maybe it's very business critical, and we don't want it to go out through internet. You can say like, okay, maybe we'll route it out through private lease line, and all other traffic like regular internet surfing or many other things, we can route it out the regular internet connection. Now, if you see, this is not, you are not talking about the destination, right? It's not destination based routing, because or else we can just do regular static routing or whatever dynamic routing modification we can. Okay, right? So like, let's read it. Okay, like if you want to use different egress interface from that which is specified in the routing table. Okay, because like for both of these connections, there'll be a default route pointing to internet from both of these interfaces, right? But we want to use different egress interface from that specified in the routing table. Okay, like for performance reasons or for network policy reasons. Also, sometimes it's like maybe we have some communication uh, that's not encrypted. Okay, now if the communication is not encrypted, preferably we would want to go it on a private lease line compared to regular internet connection. So like I was giving you the example, like bandwidth sensitive apps or unencrypted apps, we could send them using private lease line. And for internet interface, we could utilize non bandwidth sensitive apps and encrypted apps. Okay. Now, basically, just like you make a matching criteria for security policy. Okay. Similar to that, you make a matching criteria for policy based forwarding rules. Yes, Rakesh, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a general question.
Mhm.
Why we use firewall for the security reasons? If we have to work on the access list and all that, we can work with the simple routers also. What's the difference between a normal router and a firewall? Are you getting me? For the security purposes, even we can deny or permit with using the routers and creating prefix list and the access list. So, what's the requirement that we need to install a firewall in our network?
See, we'll
Actually,
not
I'm from
utilize
a routing and
firewall. No problem.
actually,
I'll
I'm
explain.
yeah.
See, I'll give you a perspective. Okay. Uh, you have this internet connection at your home. Okay. Now, what happens is when you get an internet connection, okay, at home, okay, or maybe a small office, okay. Now, in this, you are more concerned about sending the traffic here, right? Means I'll open this website, that website, or that application, and I'll access, right? You are less concerned about hosting something within your home, or less concerned about hosting something within your small office, right? But now the problem comes like if you talk about the regular internet connection. uh, if you talk about this IP address here on this router, it's most likely allocated using some DHCP service on the WAN side. Okay. I'm just talking about regular internet connection, not leasing. Okay. So what happens is this IP address you cannot fix, right? Like even in your home internet connection, the WAN interface has basically uh, DHCP. It gets an IP address from the service providers DHCP. Okay, and then everybody enjoys the internet here. But now suppose I want to host something, okay, within my premises. Like suppose I am running a server here, okay, for whatsoever reason, and I want that if people initiate a connection, if they hit on my public IP, I want to give them the services of something which I have hosted in my premises. Now, this is where the trouble will start. First thing, most likely you will not do it using a broadband internet connection. Okay, you will go for something called the lease line, right? And when you go for the lease line, they'll give you fixed public IPs. Okay, commonly, lot of service provider give 5 public IPs in India. Okay, so you get 5 IPs for your use on here and many other uses like that. Now you can use one of them on the physical interface and keep other for, or in the NAT pool or whatever you want to do. Okay. Now as soon as you have gone for the lease line, okay, these IP address will not change. Okay. Now basically you have fixed your identity for this internet. Okay, because like suppose I'm hosting a website here. Okay, suppose I'm hosting imedita.com here. Okay, which we don't do that because there are many hosting providers which can give you a far more better service. But like suppose this is the case here. Now what happens is like this guy is going to resolve my DNS to IP, right? And then this IP I'll have here out of these 5 public IPs. For 5 public IPs, I'll have this IP here. Now what happens is like suppose this guy goes for DNS query imedita.com, he gets this public IP, he hits this. Okay, now as soon as you have found this, there will be some people who will want to take advantage of now you having a fixed public IP. Okay, they'll try to do some penetration and try to get inside. Like I'll tell you, like around I'm not sure 3-4 years back. Till that time we didn't used to use lease line. Okay, we were not giving online rack access at iMedita. Okay, but then we started utilizing lease line because we had to give CCI security rack access online. Now as soon as we did that and we got the lease line, initially we just utilized public this regular router here. Okay, we started getting all sort of different attacks on this. Okay, because now you cannot change your identity for a customer, for a regular broadband customer. The IP gets changed through DHCP. So even if you want to again and again, maybe get inside of this office or this premises, you don't have any fixed thing. But once you have this, people who want to do something bad to you, they know that you cannot easily modify these things. Okay, because if you modify again, you have to modify everything for the things hosted within your premises. So this is where it is better, because a router by default will route everything. Okay, even if you have done NAT, it will NAT this to this private IP, public to private IP. Okay, but when you go for the firewall here, okay, it has better security features. Okay, like it understands a lot of attacks. Like if you talk about the next generation firewall, okay, it mitigates a lot of commonly known attacks. It mitigates this antivirus thing. So this is the reason why people go ahead for firewall. Okay, if you have not if you're not having a private lease line kind of fixed internet connection, if you're having just a broadband internet connection, most likely you won't be victim of any sort of these attacks. So you don't need then a firewall for this. Okay, I hope it's clear.
Yeah,
Little bit better, right?
So basically, firewalls are installed on the near to the lease line, and it's been installed at the service provider end, or
No, no,
we have
no.
to.
See, it depends. Okay. Uh, Now, lot of service provider, they'll bundle and say something like, okay, you are paying us 20,000 for lease line. If you pay us 10, 15,000 more, we'll throw in a firewall along with the lease line connection. Okay. But it's not necessary for you to utilize that. Like in our case, even in iMedita, we have not utilized the services of a Alto, or like we have not utilized the services of a service provider. Because we have plenty of them at our premises already, right? So service provider lease line is, it comes like this. They'll run a fiber cable, and that fiber cable will go to their device, commonly like in India with the Tata. They use Tejas, kind of that DMux mux thing, and then they'll give you a copper connection, and you can plug it into whatever device you want. You want a router or a firewall, it's up to you. Because they run the fiber till here. They most likely you might want copper, and also there's a lot of other jobs of mux. So I'll not go into that because that will take me totally out of this content. Okay. This is the reason why I tell people, like, if you are beginning with firewalls, okay, if you have not done any firewall, start with Cisco. The reason for that is because they build up very slowly. Like when you talk about even CCNA security, they'll discuss why we need security. Okay. Whereas many of these other vendors like Palo Alto, Checkpoint, Fortinet, they'll just throw at you like, this is the product, this is how you do this is how you do that. They don't build those basics. Like, in routing, you might have built those basics from CCNA. So in free
Yeah,
time, if
got it.
you feel like, not necessarily enroll a course, but like in free time, what you can do is pick up CCNA security book, or like something fundamental, and just give a reading to it. Okay, from Cisco preferably. Okay, fine. So
Got,
mhm.
got it.
Okay, so like I was telling you, that for this we basically use match criteria. Okay, policy based forwarding rule use match criteria to match the traffic. Okay, and if you have policy based forwarding configured for something, then for that particular traffic won't be routed based on the entries in the routing table. Okay, like let me show you here how do you do that. So under the policies tab, you have policy based forwarding. Okay, and if you look at that, I'll click add here. It's quite, the page is quite similar to like the security policy. Okay, okay. Give it any name, and now you can say like source zone. Okay, like if I know that maybe for something hosted within DMZ, I want that for this thing, I can mention destination as well here. Okay, and source address particular if I want to harden it, like maybe 10.0.1.12, sorry, 2.12, 2.11, I think. Yeah. 2.11, yeah. So source on this, source address this, and then we can define if the destination address is this. Okay, and this is the part of app ID. Okay, like all the applications that our firewall understands, you can mention specifically. Like I'll not touch on that right away, but like I'll just quickly show you. Like there's a lot of applications that your firewall understands. Like now you will have to understand this app ID. Like I'll give an example. Like for voice over IP, the protocol that is used is RTP. Okay, and if you look at that RTP base application here, this is like identifying that the traffic that is RTP based. Okay, RTP based means basically the audio traffic of VoIP traffic. Okay, or we can have even other, like maybe if we have some database, we can mention that. Okay, so actually app ID can be utilized even here to identify that particular application for which you want to maybe create this policy based forwarding rule. And if you don't want, yeah. Now let's discuss this during app ID. Okay, because what happens is like uh, if the communication is end-to-end encrypted, okay, not, I'm not talking about HTTPS. Okay, yeah, WhatsApp we can identify, it can identify. Okay, I think this is the, it doesn't have the updates, but WhatsApp we can identify. Okay, for WhatsApp we have an app ID. Like maybe this firewall doesn't have it. It doesn't have app ID updates, but like we have WhatsApp app ID. Okay, so I'm not saying like things like necessarily WhatsApp, but like suppose if the communication is completely encrypted, then there are some things which are difficult to figure out. But that also we can break using SSL decryption policy configuration. So I'll show you like this practically, like when we'll do decryption. Okay, then I'll show you what is the effect when we don't do decryption. Then also I'll show you the effect. So let's put this question for later. Okay, let's not get into that right. So because this app ID will spend like around 2.5, 3 hours maybe discussing this, then building policies and security things related to that. So I'm just trying to tell you that this app ID can be integrated here as well in policy-based forwarding rule. Okay. Or if you feel like even I want to add a destination along with the source, that for this particular destination I want to go it through this egress interface. So once you specify all this, like general specified, suppose I just want to specify this. Okay. Now here, if you look at forwarding, the action here says forward, discard, no PBA. Okay. Obviously, we don't want to discard right now. If you want to drop some traffic, you can just directly do that. If you specify forward, you can specify which interface should it take. Okay. I'm just randomly giving here because I don't have actually uh, two internet connection. Okay, and I'll have to make modifications in the topology for this. And you can specify a next hop IP. So you get the point. Like once you do this, all the traffic for source 10.0.2.11, wheresoever it wants to go, will be only sent out this. So see, this is not doing routing just based on destination, right? In fact, we didn't even mention destination anything, right? So you can mention the next hop IP, whatever the next hop IP is. Okay. And click OK. Also, sometimes it's like we want a schedule for this. Like maybe I want to apply this policy for based forwarding rule, but I want to do it only when it's like the time is between maybe uh, morning 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. Then you can specify schedule. Okay, and this you can even specify for security policy. Okay, even security policy has this option. It's same there as well. So if you specify the schedule, you can specify like start time, end time if you have something to be sent daily. If you want to send something weekly, you can add days like this day, this time, this end time. Okay, or if you feel like I want to set particular date, like for this particular date, 20th May, start time, end date, then you can do that as, okay, fine. So this is kind of like in Cisco, we have time-based ACL, okay. So in here, you can specify schedule also in forwarding-based, policy-based forwarding rules. And as well as this same thing schedule is applicable even in security policies. I'll just quickly show you in security policy as well, because the option is same. Okay. Under the actions where we said hello, you can specify the schedule here. Same option. Okay. Fine. You will most likely not get much questions related to routing on the PCNSE exam. So, it's not necessary to know all of this, but I've tried to touch on the routing parts as well, because sometimes people are like, okay, I want to do policy based routing. They don't know that this feature is also here. So we have tried to touch on all these things. Okay. Also, you can have path monitoring just like we configured yesterday for static route. Okay. Uh, kind of like the Cisco track object. Okay. We can have path monitoring for policy based forwarding rule as well. Like in here, I'll go back to this policy based forwarding rule. If I click on monitor, I can create a monitor profile and say like, wait and recover 3 seconds, threshold 5 seconds. We can specify an IP here, like maybe, try pinging this IP address. Okay. And for that, ping every 3 seconds. Okay. Interval is like how frequently you ping. Okay. Threshold is like if you don't get a reply for 5 seconds, you, like in this case, we did wait and recover. We could also do failover. Failover means this particular policy-based forwarding rule will be deleted from the, not deleted, but like kind of disabled. Okay. So maybe if you have some other policy-based forwarding rule, then that will be applicable. So this is for that purpose. Okay.
Sir, I have one question, basic questions. Suppose if we have created policy-based forwarding, and also we have we have created static route. So which one comes on the first priority?
Policy-based forwarding here.
Policy-based forwarding.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you the reason for that. See. Wait. You see, this is the traffic processing that we have discussed even with other things. So if you see in the initial packet processing, once it checks source zone and address and user ID, it looks for policy-based forwarding. If it doesn't find anything in the policy-based forwarding for that packet, then it does a forwarding lookup. Okay.
Okay.
And also there is a more detailed packet flow. Even in that, you can see that there is policy-based forwarding which is given preference. Like,
Okay. So suppose for a one.
let me show you that. Okay, they have not mentioned it here, but it's policy-based forwarding. Okay, like they have not mentioned here like get egress interface, VCs, and they have not discussed policy-based forwarding here. But it's that. Yeah, you had some other question?
No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next let's touch on this security and NAT policy. Okay, and like we even discussed earlier, for now, focus on these things. Okay, like we have seen session created, even session IDs and all, and we'll make a security policy to allow certain things. Although we have discussed certain things practically, we just discussed them theoretically. Okay. So, like whenever the traffic comes in the firewall, either it will be matched and allowed or matched and blocked. Okay. So only two scenarios. Okay. Now, based on basic criteria for control of traffic, which we have already seen, is source zone, destination zone. You can specify a rule, create a security policy based on that. If you want more specific criteria, we can have source address, destination address, port number, application URL, source user, and even HIP profile. Okay. Now these are actually self-explanatory, but like, what is this? Okay. In here, what you can do is you can with HIP profile you can check for certain things in the end device. Like if you are familiar with Cisco ICE, okay, or if you are not familiar, there are a lot of network admission control mechanisms. Okay. Now, what they do is, like suppose in our company, we want that people will be allowed to access these some business critical servers, like maybe accounting and things. only if they have maybe, you know, Windows 10. They must have Avast and antivirus with latest, maybe max 1 day old antivirus things. And we can define a lot of host related information that these checkboxes like this, these things should be there, then only we'll allow access of that. So for all of this NAC mechanism here, we have a HIP profile. Okay. This works along with the Global Protect VPN, actually, the VPN client that people have in their laptop, because until unless you have something in your laptop, you can't figure out these things, right? You cannot figure out these things just from the packets that the device is sending. You need to have some something like an agent working for you at the end device, telling you like whether this is there or not. Okay, like I'll show you now. If I go to this security profile, sorry, security policy, not profile. Profile is a different thing. In the security policy, you see here we can specify source, address, destination, address. Here, if you look at HIP profile, okay, you can add HIP profile. And in that, you will have to add HIP object as well. Okay. Now, you configure them most likely by going under the objects. Okay. Now, right away today, we'll not be able to touch these things because this is something we can do only once we have Global Protect. Okay. Because currently, like even if we want to have this on Win2 or Win3, they don't have, you know, these. They don't have Global Protect configured, so not possible right now. But like I'll show you like what I'm talking about. Like if I go to HIP object, I'll add, and see here you can specify like maybe whatever you want to name it. Host information, you can specify that the domain should contain this, or maybe you don't want domain, you want like operating system, Microsoft, you know, like Windows 10. Fine. Then you could also specify things like, you know, like anti-malware. Suppose let's go to that. And you could say like, okay, for anti-malware, the virus definition version should be within max 1 day old. It cannot be more than 1 day old. And the product version is not, is this or is that. There's many options. Okay. Now, if you want to specify a particular vendor, you can specify vendor here. Okay. Like maybe I was just saying, like suppose Avast, and their Avast business security, it should be installed. Okay. Yeah, it's not like obviously Avast will not be bundled along with the Palo Alto, right? So it's just like telling like if these things are not there, like you can even specify the disk encryption. Okay, the disk encryption should be there. Okay, you can even specify a vendor for that. Okay, like it should be whatever. Okay, crypto systems, FineCrypt. Okay, if it is not there, will not allow. So these things like disk backup should be there. You can specify all these things. Okay, firewall. Okay, we can specify. Okay, maybe Avast, endpoint protection plus. or internet security, this, that. We can specify all these things. Okay. It depends on what kind of endpoint protection you have deployed in your company as well, right? So once you create this heap object, you mention this heap object in a heap profile, and then you can apply it onto the security policy. I hope you got the basic idea like what it is. Heap is host information profile. Okay, fine. Just a second. Okay, now all of this traffic, okay, it will not include the traffic originating from the management interface. Like currently, to manage this firewall, all of my traffic from my laptop is going through this management interface to this Palo Alto. Okay, so that is not subject to any security policy rule. Okay, like I showed you, even in Palo Alto documentation, you will find that they'll tell you that client to server flow must be enabled. Server to client flow will automatically be enabled. Now, when people read this kind of statements first time, they feel like, okay, maybe the server means Windows server or Linux server or something like that. No, it doesn't mean that. What it means, you see, both of the sides have kept laptop, so that you don't start thinking like that. Okay, we could have kept a server here because, but it's not about the server like we talk in general. It's like the initiator is called client, one who initiates the communication. Like in our case, when Win2 tried to ping Win3, okay, then ICMP echo request, since we had allowed everything from under zone to DMZ zone, ICMP echo request went and echo reply came back, right? So that's the case. That I wanted to explain. Like client to server flow must be enabled using rule. Server to client flow will automatically be allowed, okay, because the firewall is stateful. Okay, a packet is matched to a session, and each session is matched to a security rule. We have seen these practically. I'm just going to go through these concepts. A session can consist of one or two flows. Okay, it depends on the flow. Like if it is a multicast traffic flow, it will be single. But if it is a TCP traffic flow, it will be two-way, right? So also, server definition for a firewall is different from server definition for host. Okay, so we are actually not providing any service here. Okay, it's just that traffic responder. Okay, clear? Any doubts in this? Okay, like I told you, Palo Alto Networks is a stateful firewall. All traffic is matched against a session. Each session is then matched against a security policy rule. Okay. Now, any session can consist of 6 things, 6 tuples: source address, destination address, source, destination port number, protocol number, source security zone, which we saw in the show session all command. Right? These information was here. Each session is assigned a unique session ID number, which we saw 21, 22, 23, that those numbers here. So this is the session ID, and this is the 6 tuple information. Okay. Now, again, I discussed this earlier when we made our first security policy, that there are 3 types of security policy rules. Okay. Universal, intrazone, interzone. Okay. When you talk about intrazone, within the zone, intrazone means zone X to zone X or zone Y to zone Y. Okay. Interzone between the zones, like zone X to zone Y or zone Y to zone X. And then universal is applicable for both inter and intra. Okay. It's applicable for both zone X to zone X and zone X to zone Y. Okay. Also see this thing. Like suppose I'm making an intrazone rule. Okay. And I suppose say this zone. Okay. Then they don't give you the option to select the destination zone because this is a intrazone rule. That means traffic coming from this zone and going also towards this zone. Okay. You can just specify the address. You cannot specify the zone. Okay. The rest everything is same. Like this particular rule which we made, it was interzone. That is why we could specify source zone, destination zone. So, like I told you, by default, firewall will implicitly allow intrazone traffic and deny interzone traffic. Okay, why? Because these 2 security policies are there by default. Intrazone, which allows everything, and this last one, which is interzone, which denies everything. You will have to create explicit rules to allow all of the traffic. Okay. Now, if you look at the traffic logging, okay, all the logs don't work for the unlicensed firewall. Like this firewall is an unlicensed firewall. You won't be able to see the logs here. Okay, that's what they have restricted for the unlicensed firewall. Okay, but I have another firewall which has the logs and license and everything, so I'll show you logs on that. I'm just telling you this so that you don't waste your time trying to generate logs here. Okay, won't work in unlicensed firewall. Now, see, if you look at this, any security policy rule, suppose I create another new security policy rule. You see under the actions tab, it's like log at session end. and log at session start. Log at session start means when the session starts, when the, maybe suppose if there is a TCP session, when the three-way handshake happens, at that time logging will start. Okay, if you have this checkbox checked. If you have this checkbox checked and not this checkbox checked, then the log will be generated after the TCP three-way handshake complete connection, transfers the data and gets over. Basically, it terminates the connection, then your log will be generated. Okay. So by default, this checkbox was checked. I didn't check it, right? So that's why we say that for all the explicit rules. Okay. And in fact, even this rule, we didn't touch this portion till now, right? So if you see, by default, in all the explicit rules that you define as an admin, logging is done. But if you look at these implicit rules, which were there by default, if you try to click on this one, you see the actions tab, although everything is grayed out, but on the actions tab, you see nothing will be logged for implicit rule. Okay. So no log will be generated for intrazone traffic or interzone traffic because these rules are predefined. Okay. So that's what we mean when we say explicit rule by default traffic is logged. All the implicit rules which are by default there, traffic is not logged. Okay. Although we can modify this thing. Okay. So let me show you. And pay close attention to this. That's why I'm zooming in so much. You see this small gear icon, okay? Or that typical flower which people use in temples, whatever you want to call it. Okay. This gear icon represents that these are predefined rules. If you hover over it, it shows you this from predefined, right? Now, if you come down here, okay, just focus and notice this thing, okay, after I've done things. So currently, these are in their default state, okay, both of these rules are in their default state. If I go down here and you see, I cannot delete these rules, okay. What option I have, okay, like I have one of these rules selected, right? I don't have the option to disable them, enable them, or delete or add. What I can do is I can click on this override icon. Okay, like if you remember, like just right now, when I clicked on this rule, everything was grayed out. Like, can I modify anything here? Right, I cannot modify anything here. Okay, can I check this checkbox? No. But if I click on this rule and if I click on this override button here, nothing to modify here, but I can see now modify some tags. What are tags? We'll look at that later. But like actions, if you see, I can define and modify the actions. Although you will not modify these default rules because sometimes it can create problems like you unnecessarily allowing something which you should not have allowed. But like suppose I want to log all the traffic that is matching these intrazone and interzone rules, then I can check these checkboxes. Okay. But by default, these predefined rules, their logs are not generated, but you can override that. Okay. And again, see, you see, currently we have just one gear icon. right? If I click OK, notice the difference. Now it is kind of like two gear icons, right? If you click or if you hover over this, what you see is like we are overriding the predefined rule. Okay, that means we have made some modifications in this. Okay. Now you might be wondering like, why am I zooming in and showing you this in so much? See, when you go for the PCNSE certification exam, lot of the things that you are going to get there because they don't have any simulation to test. Okay, they'll give you screenshots and ask you questions. Okay, and if you don't pay attention to these small details, sometimes it will be very difficult for you to answer question. Like I'll give you an example. Suppose, okay, I give you a screenshot of these security policy rules, and I give you an option down below. I'm just giving an example. It's not the exact question. Suppose I give you an option down below on the certification exam that default rules have not been overridden. True, false. Now, until unless you have really paid attention while doing lab, you won't be able to answer that, because you will be like, how do I know from this small screenshot? So that's why I'm saying, like, when you do lab, pay attention, and I'll try to focus your attention on certain things which I found interesting. Like even when I tried I went for the certification exam, I found a lot of questions were like, when I first read them, I was like, how am I supposed to tell this just by this screenshot? Okay, like if you give me access of firewall, I can check it. Okay, so these kind of things can be a little bit irritating. Sometimes you will feel like the question is completely wrong, whereas the question includes the things. Okay, like if you look at from this level and you have not paid attention, you might not even notice that this rule is overridden. Okay, I hope I've made myself clear, like what I'm trying to say. Okay, so you can override the predefined rules. So we can add new rules using add, delete existing rules. If you feel like I want to make a rule similar to like this, you can select that rule and make a clone, make a copy of it. Okay, then modify accordingly. So add is clear, delete is clear, clone is clear. Override is applicable only for the default rules. Okay, it's not applicable for the explicitly defined other rules. Okay, we cannot override these. Okay. Also,